Well, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you might be. Welcome to Collitalks Transformative Conversations. Well, it's been a journey. I'm actually in Florida right now, and I must say, it is glorious. So I'm sitting right now doing a deep dive into, as I always do, certain aspects in life when they show up. And I'm sitting in an office at a golf course where the air is thick, not just with humidity, but with a 35-year cycle of memory. Yes, 35 years. So, for many of you listening, a place is just a coordinate on a map, but for the body, a place is a library. It stores the clinch of every trauma and the thaw of every victory. I lived here in Florida in 1991. And back then, I was basically a woman in hiding. My body had hit a wall that no amount of hustle could climb. I was living with profound chronic fatigue. My system had literally pulled the emergency brake on my life. And, I was a receiver of everyone else's needs. I call it a pack mule for my family emotional debt. And externally, I was being hunted by a stalker. And that is the truth. I had driven my daughter to her school in Sarasota, and I took my car in for maintenance. And I decided to do what I always like to do, which is to treat people when they're providing value. I like to provide value back. And so I went to walk along the road to a place where I could get the mechanics some donuts and coffee. And now on my way back, I could sense that I was being followed. Now remember, I'm walking. So the pace picked up, the fear ignited more and more. And I knew because I could see that he was in a car stalking me. I decided to run across the meridian and I fell and donuts and coffee went flying. But I saw a store in a strip mall and I ran into the store and I quickly explained to the lady to hide me. And lo and behold, he came and he was peering in the windows of all the stores there. So she did hide me. I phoned the mechanic and he said, "Stay where you are, we'll come and get you." And they did. And he actually said to me, "Let him come here. He'll be sorry that he did." Well, he didn't. But the fear from that event, living on my own with my daughter, and she being at a very young age, and me only knowing very few people here, it set up a lot of fear in my system. And of course, I worked through it, but I was, 3,000 miles away from my origin. And yet I was more trapped than I had ever been. So now, at the age I am, I've returned to Florida and I'm sitting, like I say, in the office of a client and a dear friend, a man I have worked with for many years to help him build his dream, his own dream. And I'm looking at the evidence of this that was successfully completed and handed off in a way that is just amazing. So today we're going to talk about somatic geography and how to reverse engineer the ghosts that keep us frozen in the past so we can finally arrive in our own present. When I was here in 1991, I didn't understand the science of the soul. I thought I was sick and I thought I was unlucky. But I want you to listen closely to this. Chronic fatigue is rarely just a virus. In the work I do now, I see it as the expiration of the slave contract. In 1991, I had, oh my goodness, reached the limit of my utility. I had been the glue for everyone else's broken houses. And my body finally said, no, no. No, because it was the only way to save my life from a lineage that wanted to use me until I was empty. Because I was always reaching out to save others. My gates were always wide open. And that's why the stalker could find me. My energy, it was leaking that kind of energy, fear. So when you don't have a sovereign shield, you attract those who want to own your light. And at that moment, I lived in a permanent clinch, my shoulders, my neck. They were all bookkeeping the debt of a life spent in service. So back then, the Florida sun felt like an exposure I couldn't survive. It felt like a spotlight on my already depletion. But roll forward, the 20-year bridge from utility to authority, which is where I'm at now. So the last 20 years, I've worked alongside Robbie and many other clients, and we've navigated the gray grind together. I've used my tools to help him anchor his vision and find his own spine. And today, sitting in this office, I see and feel, and I know that he has arrived. Robbie is totally living his dream, and he deserves every second of it. And here, is the unsaleable truth for especially mothers and the fixers listening. There comes a moment when you stop being the foreman of someone else's building. Recently I had worked with an 18-year-old engineering student who sat with me after the session, but during the session, she as she watched me do my work, she said, you are reverse engineering the soul. And I was like, wow, this girl, this amazing young woman gets it. She was right. I then realized that my 20 years of helping was actually a deep investigation into the mother womb line. And I had to learn how to not just help others, like Robbie build his dream without losing my own life force in the process. I had to learn how to be a muse instead of a slave. And believe me, I've actually been called a slave by a couple of people, which is ironic, but not. And it doesn't bother me anymore if that was to be now, because I'm not. So I had to dismantle the architecture of rescue so that I could finally return to Florida, not as a victim of fatigue, but as a major person in the line of work that I do with family constellations and systemic trauma and freedom from self-sabotage. So from a victim to all encompassing that of which is the thaw. So today I sit and the Florida ghost of 1991 is gone. Yeah, I'm actually working on my trilogy here, and I'm no longer hiding from the light. I'm absorbing it to reline my nerves with silk. The sun that used to feel like an exposure now feels like biophotonic signaling. And if you're listening to this and you feel washed up or trapped by your health, or if you feel like you've spent your whole life building someone else's office and you don't have a seat of your own, I want you to look at my life. I'm now 70, and I am just beginning. I'm the most successful I've ever been, not because I'm working hard, but because I'm clinching less. I've outlived the stalker. I have outlived the fatigue. I have outlived the mother contract that said I had to be sick to be loyal. And I'm sitting really on my own golden throne. And from here, the view is magnificent. So you don't need to fix your life. You need to reverse engineering the clinch that is holding you back. And during my time here, which will be a few weeks, I have a few spots open for I say sovereign audits, but we're not going to talk about your trauma. We're going to map your life force, the life force leaks. And, we're going to find where you're still paying a tax to a lineage that is ready for you to be free. The 1991 version of me couldn't imagine this level of ease, but the 2026 version of me knows it is my birthright and it's your birthright. So for now, I'm going to sign off and go out and enjoy this glorious weather, the beautiful fragrances of the hibiscus and the beautiful flowers that are just presenting so much color and aroma. And I'm Colli, Dr. Colli Christante. And you know what? I'll see you soon. I'll see you in the thaw. Have an amazing, amazing week. And remember, lots of love and soul hugs.